Hi, everybody, and away we go with another edition of the Stampede Wrestling Show.
Good evening to our great wrestling fans across the world, and welcome to another edition of Heartbeat Radio. We have an excellent show this evening with one of the true legends of wrestling, the original assassin, Jody Hamilton. Our guest co-host this evening from Chicago, Bob Brooks, and Bob's been on many times with us before. And joining Bob will be none other than Bruce Hart.
It's a real honor and a pleasure for me to have a chance to talk to a guy that I've admired and heard so many great things about from so many guys that I had high respect for, and that's Jody Hamilton. The word legend and superstar and all that's often overused in the, especially in the WWE. But Jody's one of the most respected and highly regarded guys in the business and has been for many years. And as I was telling him before, one of the marks of a really great guy is when guys that you hold in high respect speak highly of that guy. And I remember back in the day so many guys that I looked up to and admired, guys like Harley Race and Ronnie Etchison and Dorian Terry Funk and all. They all spoke so highly of Jody Hamilton. He was kind of like an iconic legend, Not only was he a legendary wrestler, but he's one of the great trainers and coaches. He's had a big hand in quite a few of today's great stars, too. So also Bob Brooks, too, really well-known and respected authority.
Well, thanks, Bruce, and always a pleasure to be here with you, and thanks to Bob Johnson handling the controls tonight. And, one of the things, Bruce, that you just said, how much you learn, and I think that's one thing that sets people aside, people like yourself, who learn every day in this business. When you stop learning, like they say, if you think you know it all, you're in the wrong business, and because you constantly learn, or you should be learning anyway. And we learn from those veterans like we have tonight, the assassin. So without any further ado, let's bring in one of the all-time greats in professional wrestling, masked or unmasked. He's a longtime friend, and look forward to having him on, and that is the assassin, Jody Hamilton.
Appreciate those kind words, and I appreciate you inviting me back, because it is indeed my honor to appear here with you guys and talk about the thing that I love and have spent my entire adult life in, and that's professional wrestling. I had the opportunity and the good fortune to sit and visit with, because they lived about 15 miles. They lived in a little town called Savannah, Missouri, which was about 15 miles from my hometown of St. Joe, and that was the Zabisco brothers, Stanislaus and Lodick. And they allowed, of course, they were almost to a point of being a recluse, and they didn't allow anybody. They allowed nobody to come to their house, and so on. And Gus Karras called him for me and talked to him and told him that I was an up-and-coming young wrestler and da-da-da, and I was anxious to meet him. So they consented to let me come up there. And I drove up there, and I sat down and talked with them, and I didn't think they was ever going to let me go after that. After about the first 30 minutes, we broke the ice, and they found out that I wasn't a wise ass that came up there with an attitude that I knew everything, and I was there to learn from them and to listen to their stories and listen to their psychological approach to the wrestling profession. During their era, and what they think of it during the era that I was interviewing them, and so on. And we got along quite well. And I was invited to come back up there to visit them, and unfortunately, I was on the road on my way to Florida, I think, as it was, when Gus called me and told me that they had called the office, requested me to come back up there, and Gus told them that I was out of town, that I was on my way to Florida, and so on. And said, well, maybe when he gets back or so on, but unfortunately I never really got back. But they were very, very interesting men, and told some stories about, mostly they didn't really get into individuals as much as they did the manner in which they actually got in the business themselves, and the hardships that they went through, and how they were while they were learning their craft, they were damn near starved to death, and they were living. Their two brothers, they were living in a small one-room apartment. I guess it wasn't even an apartment; it was just a one-room boarding house type thing, and they did chores around the house for food and stuff, and then back then, if you made $2 or $3 in what we call spot shows later on, if they made $2 or $3 and everything, that was a lot of money. They were two fascinating gentlemen, and they were gentlemen.
Yeah, there seemed to be. My dad always used to say that there was certain sort of a code of honor, or just sort of a decorum about the business back then. He told me all the guys back in his day always used to wear a suit to the matches, even if there was a spot show or whatever.
Oh yes, and not only the wrestlers, but the fans themselves. I've got some pictures back during the 40s and the 50s of pictures of different shows, and you look at the fans at ringside and everything. They're all there in suit and tie. They're not there in
all the wearing hats
and flip-flops and stuff,
I remember when I was first breaking in, if I chose to show up in jeans or any of that, you'd have some of the old guys chew your ass out and tell you that they can tell you that you're a rookie, or they give you some sermon about if you don't respect yourself, how do you expect the fans to respect you or look up to you? And it all made sense to me too, I might add. You sort of back in the day, you'd never see the boys out standing in the crowd or having a pop or trying to hit on some ring rats or any of that stuff. And if any of the rookies were out there doing that, one of the veterans would summon them and chew their ass out in the dressing room and tell them that a certain mystique that you're supposed to endeavor to put over, and you're not doing that. But
Tom and I made it a point, because even we were told by different people at different times, but we were told the same line, given the same line. If you want to be a professional, then the first step is you got to look like one. And if you're going to wear jeans and flip-flops or shorts and flip-flops into an arena and everything, you do not look professional. So that's why Tom and I, wherever we went, all the times that we were together and everything, we wore slacks and a shirt. Most of the time, especially for big shows, it was always shirt and tie and a suit and a coat, or it was a sport jacket and a dress shirt into arenas and everything. We never, even when we went to Florida, and the guy that owned the territory, Eddie Graham, running around in shorts and flip-flops. We didn't. We still dressed.
I remember a few of the masked guys we had up here, and I remember some of them would not have their masks on and all, and I remember some of the veterans always used to refer to the assassins and say there's a team down in Carolina or whatever, and nobody's ever seen them without their masks on, and they're the best team in the business and all like that, and they protect their gimmick and all this other, and it always used to drive me nuts, if a guy's trying to get his gimmick over, why would he kill it all by walking into some truck stop or some bar without the mask on, or what's the point, and these days, if it's funny, I've done a number of WWE shows, and I'm sure you've been around that spectrum as well, but you see all the guys going, in the bar afterwards, and they're all hanging out together, heels and faces, and I remember I said to a few of them when I was on some of those, talking about kayfabe or protecting, and they give me this, what I thought was a horseshit rationale. Well, they all know it's at work, and I'd shake my head like I couldn't wrap my head around.
Yeah, but who tells them it's at work? They do.
And I said the marks don't want to know. I said
they use that old worn-out excuse. Kayfabe is dead. Well, who in the hell killed it? They killed it by not having enough goddamn ability to go out there and do the job that they are paid to do and do it properly, and that's make a work look like a shoot. Bruce, guess what I got here in my hand?
What's that?
This is a newspaper clipping, and I know you remember this man well. It's from St. Joseph, Missouri News Press Gazette from Thursday, March the 8th, 1994. There's a picture of this wrestler in there, and it also, the headline says, Pro Wrestling Legend Passes Away. And it's a picture and a story about Ronnie Etchison.
Oh, yeah.
And I know you remember Ronnie. He was a big card up there for up in the Vancouver area, and also in Calgary.
He was one of my dad's favorites. He always had the cigar, and great guy. He did a lot of business up here for my dad, and he was one of the guys who always, even then, speaking of you, back in. He must have crossed paths with you already by that time, and
well, we were from the same
those workers.
And I grew up. I first met Ronnie when I was about 12 years old, and he and my brother were very good friends too. And of course, my brother was like almost 7 years older than me, and he had started in the business a lot sooner than I did. But I've been going around the business, like I said, since I was about 12 years old. And Ronnie was one of the first guys that I met. And Ronnie was always very nice to me. And Ronnie helped me a lot when I was getting started. After I left New York in 1958, Ronnie got me booked in San Francisco for...
Was that Malkowicz back in those
Brothers.
Days? Joe and Frank or whatever?
That's where I first met Nick Bockwinkel. He was in the Army at the time. He was stationed at Fort Ord.
Was old Warren up there then, too?
And, no, he had retired. Tom Rice was up there, and I forget who was all there now, but there was a bunch of guys there. Ronnie was living. It was about 40, 50 miles north of San Francisco, and I would go up there and on weekends with him, and he would invite me up there, and I'd stay the weekend with him, and his wife was an extremely nice woman, and I really liked her. Her name was Almeida. And like I say, he did a lot to help me in the business and everything. And later on, towards the end of his career, he was kind of having some tough times and stuff. And Tom and I got him. He was having, because of his age and so on, he was having some problems getting booked and everything. So Tom and I got him into the Carolinas, and then we got him into later on. From that, we got him into Florida.
You don't see that much of that these days. It's something that seems to be missing, and probably would be good for the business if there was more of these, veterans around, kind of just giving advice and sometimes giving the guys a kick in the ass.
Well, unfortunately, the business has changed to the point now to where it's practically impossible for the guys to do stuff like that. First of all, no more territories. The only major promotion left is WWE, if you can call that a promotion. And I'm not singing sour grapes, because I have a lot of respect for Vince McMahon Jr. because of what he's been able to do. I mean, he took his father's business, which was a good business, but he turned it into a multi-billion-dollar industry. Now, I don't believe I don't care for his philosophy towards the business. I don't care for the way that he treats the business, and I have expressed my opinion on that several times. And
yeah,
of course, that's why.
Too, you know.
That's why
he should.
Nobody in my family.
Quite honestly,
can
he
get
should
a job
be.
with him.
He should be hearing that perspective. You know, he has enough smoke blowing up his sphincter and all the other that you know. If I was he, I'd be.
Well, but that's his ego.
Wanting some
he doesn't want somebody there that can think for themselves, or someone that has independent thoughts or ideas and so on. All he wants is people that are an extension of his ideas, that want to bow down and like he is the exalted ruler of wrestling. And
oh yeah, and blow smoke. And
you know, I don't. Oh yeah, you know, when I was running the training center for him there in a little town called McDonough, and we had some great talent, but I flew up there to New York and sit down with Vince and had the meeting with him and all that, and Vince told me straight to my face, he says, I want you to have a different type school than these other guys have had, and I want you to teach these guys the psychology of the business. And I said, done deal. And that's what I set out to do. But also I set out to do, because they were sending me guys that were nothing but, a lot of them were nothing but steroid freaks.
Oh, yeah, big muscle
you know,
heads.
on the weights and stuff, and yeah, big old muscle heads. And you get them
big
in there
to
actually have a match and everything, and they were sucking wind in 3-4 minutes.
And
so I had them all on cardiovascular routines.
And most of those idiots I remember Vince sent a bunch of them up to Calgary too, like Kazmaier and Ted Orsini and all those guys, and they were like aerobically challenged, but their egos were the biggest thing. You know, they couldn't bring themselves to sell, and they were muscle bound and stiff, and they kind of had horseshit attitudes and everything, and very few of them amounted to anything, you know. And I remember my dad used to. Those are the guys that he seemed to, you know, like to stretch the most. Get those.
Oh yes, absolutely.
The big bodybuilders, and
freaks.
Most of them had little or no wrestling ability. They weren't like tough or anything. But my dad's almost got some vicarious orgasm, you know, putting him in some kind of sugar hold and hearing them squeak. And you mentioned psychology, and that's like an operative word, and that's one of the things that so few of the guys coming in today, they don't have a damn clue about any of that, you know. And I remember it was one of the first things
who in the hell's left to teach them? You know, I mean, the guys that are running these schools that the guys are going to are controlled by WWE. And
in a lot of cases,
like I was telling you before,
they weren't great workers.
When I had the gym for WWE and everything, and like I told you, Vince himself told me he wanted me to train the guys in the art of psychology, which I was doing. But psychology don't mean nothing if you're blown up in 5 minutes anyway. So along with the psychology course and everything, I was giving those big muscle heads and everything some cardiovascular training, which they called up. 2 or 3 of them called up the office, and at that time, Ronnie Etchison was the go-between Vince and me and the gym.
Tony Ace,
well, Ronnie Etchison, he'd give me that. Vince is livid, and I said, "What's he livid about?" Well, he could never tell me, you know. I told him, I said, "Well, give me Vince's number, or private number, because you could never get through to him on the business number." I said, "Give me Vince's private number, and I'll call him and tell him that explain to him and answer all of his questions about what's going on and how we're running the school here." "Oh no, you can't do that," and everything. Da. He used to use that phrase, "Vince is livid." He used to use it like a baseball player swinging a baseball bat to hit a home run, and he tried to, and he intimidated everybody with that thing. And I guess I'm not bragging on myself, but I guess I'm the only one that he didn't intimidate with it. And finally, I just got fed up with it after about the fifth or sixth time I heard it. And I said, well, who really gives a damn? I said, let me tell you something. I said, I've been around tough guys all my life. And I said, and you ain't mentioned anybody yet that's tough. And I said, so if you expect me to grovel on my hands and knees and piss down my leg because Vince is livid, I said, you talking to the wrong SOB. And Laurinaitis recorded that and played it for Vince. And they shut me down.
And it's too damn bad, but the only one that suffered from that was Vince, and it's a shame because that's exactly what they need. They need somebody that actually has some respect for the business and knows what the business really is. And they need somebody to take these guys and, exactly like you said, instill some damn sense of psychology, And I remember when I was breaking in, it was all pretty simple, I never hear that anymore. They'd always tell you that the cell sets up the comeback and the wrestling sets up the high spots and these basic things that kind of you operated within those parameters, and that was how you became a worker, And nowadays I see these damn high spots and I sort of roll my eyes and say, the high spot, if everything is a high spot, then there's no more high spots, It's like it's all a contradiction. And I'm sure when you were breaking in, I remember when I was a wet behind the ears punk rookie, and some of the Mexican guys, my dad up here, they used to like to do more high spots than they should. And I remember the old farts like Archie Goldie or some of those guys would chew your ass out for doing high spots, and they'd say, why did you do the cartwheel or the such and such, what's the point of that? It's got nothing to do with wrestling. And it made perfect sense, and nowadays I see these guys doing high spots, and I laugh the odd time I've been down there working. They got these referees, most of whom have never ever worked or whatever, and they got an earpiece in, and there's some flunky up in a booth or something telling them to tell you to keep moving or some bullshit or do another spot. And,
some guy that's never had a pair of tights on in his life,
And I'm kind of laughing at this thing. And the old
days, a hammerlock from a padlock.
Oh yeah, they've sort of demeaned them and reduced them to being like puppets on a string, and the puppet masters up in the booth or whatever,
To me, the bottom line is, in Vince's respect, is he wants to be the total absolute czar. He wants everyone to be subservient to him. So consequently, his attitude prevents anybody from even attempting to try to be honest with him and to tell him what everything is really all about and what needs to be done, because he has his own ideas, his own thoughts, and everything, and Vince is strictly an entertainment-orientated guy, a Hollywood-type entertainment-orientated. So consequently, anything else above and beyond that is unacceptable. Well, they haven't got one guy up there, I mean not one damn guy up there, that's got the cojones enough to say, Vince, you need to sit down and listen to this, listen to me. What we're doing is going down the wrong path, and the houses that we're drawing now are proving it. But nobody's going to do that, to hell.
I totally agree. You actually need somebody like yourself, or somebody that's been there and got some perspective and is not afraid of losing their job or whatever. It needs a lot more of that kind of input rather than some script writer or some, Freddie Prinze Jr. or some bullshit telling him to, have more costumes, or every guy walk into the ring with a damn microphone in their hand, or, all this other nonsense. They really need to get back to that kind of stuff, and I don't know whether they ever will. It's hard to, kind of break habits.
As long as Vince has got a stranglehold on it, it'll never get back, because his ego will not allow him to take advice from anybody. He's got to set the standard
Wizard of Oz or whatever
he thinks everybody else should adhere to. And you know, if he wants somebody that's got credentials and everything, I've got credentials. Hell, I wrestled 14 different world champions, for crying out loud. I put 97 people in the professional ranks. You know, some of them made it, some of them didn't. But I put 97 of them in the ranks, and some of them are still there. You know, Triple H is still there. The Miz is still there. I trained all these guys. Big Show, Goldberg, Kevin Nash, he's still around. Mark Merrill, Dallas Page, you know, and I trained Natty Neihart. I just, you know, like I say, I'm proud of the fact that I trained all these people and that they were good enough to make it in the wrestling business. Some of them stayed with it. Some of them are still in it and are doing well. But by the same token, he needs people. And I'm not, believe me, I'm 76 years old, and I'm not bucking for a job. I don't need a job, don't really want a job. But he needs people like me, and there aren't that damn many left, so if he's going to do it, he better hurry up and get it done. He needs people like me that's not going to sit back, kiss his ass, and tell him how great he is, but tell him the damn truth. Of course, the truth is something I don't think any of them up there want to hear.
I totally agree.
And the truth of the matter is, the crap that they're putting out there for the TV fan or for the fans and everything it's bullshit.
Oh, totally. I totally agree.
It's substandard programming. You can't fool guys like me and you because we've been around the business long enough to know. You know, when you see the ringside and then everything behind the ringside is dark, there ain't nobody up there. They got it blacked out because they don't want the people to see on the TV. They don't want people to see how poor the crowd is. Well, their crowds have been bad for a long time now, and that ought to tell them something. That the MO that they're using right now ain't getting it done. They need to change their MO. They need to change their complete and total training system, and they need to go in a completely different direction. And Vince needs to sit back and let somebody that knows what the hell they're doing run the business for a while and see how much it improves and how quickly it can and will improve. Because wrestling fans are out there. Wrestling fans are hungry for a quality product that they're not getting.
In my day, and I'm sure yours,
we'd have a booker and an assistant booker,
and that was it.
They would have an office, and they would sit, and they would put together ideas and angles, and that's how it would be just like it was back in the old days.
And there was no telecasting it to the world or smart marks knowing what the finish of WrestleMania or who, you know, none of that bullshit.
Yeah, I know, Jesus.
You didn't even know till the night of the show. Most of the boys had no idea what was going to happen, and you'd tell them what the hell you want them to do. Yeah, I can't wrap my head around that whole...
Do you remember Dick Steinborn?
Yeah, Dick Tricky Dicky, yeah.
Expounding on what you said a while ago about even the boys not knowing what's going on. Tom was the booker. This was in Augusta, Georgia. The first week, Steinborn and I went through 60 minutes, no falls. The second week, we went through 90 minutes, no falls. The third week, we came back, and the match started at exactly 9:15. The bell rang. At 1 minute after 12 midnight, 2 hours and 46 minutes later, Steve Manderson, the promoter, got in the ring, rang the bell, said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have to stop the matches because I no longer have a lease on this building. It's now 1 minute past midnight, Tuesday morning, and I do not have a lease, so we have to stop the matches." Place was sold out and turned away. But the boys themselves had no idea of what we were going to do. They were astonished. And the thing that made me feel so good about the whole thing was when Tom asked me if he thought that we could do it, I said, yeah. I said, with Steinborn, I said, I can do it. Because Steinborn and I weren't particularly good friends, but I loved to work with the guy. He responded to everything that I did, and I responded to everything that he did. Anyway, At the end of it, the entire crowd stood up and give both of us, not just him, but give both of us a standing ovation because they appreciated the hard work. And like I said, the boys themselves had no earthly idea that we were going to go 2 hours and 46 minutes. And that's the way it should be all the time.
I've said it for years, but most of those guys who are breaking in, even if they are great prospects, and a lot of them aren't, the best thing they can do with those guys is put them on the road for about 2 or 3 years and actually have them go out and learn how to work. Very few of them, most of the guys, and you don't like to sound like a cynic or whatever, but half the guys in the WWE, I think the main reason they got in there is from their, proficiency at kissing sphincters, and not much else,
For a new guy to get a job up there, that's a requirement. Being having a well-developed proficiency for ass kissing.
Yeah, and occasionally backstabbing if it helps, kind of, kind of further your agenda or whatever.
There's no loyalties among the guys up there. That's for sure.
No, it's.
And I remember, back in my day, we had the Stooges and the Snitches, and of course every business has got that. But for the most part, there was always a certain clique of guys in every territory and everything that were loyal to each other, that would, regardless of what happened, wouldn't snitch on each other, and stuck together and protected the business together. And that's one of the reasons why
those are the guys who were
the business would thrive.
Those are the guys who were most respected.
And those guys were seasoned veterans generally.
If any of those guys called Stu up and recommended somebody, that was like the badge of honor or whatever, or if any of those guys ever called up and wanted to come up, it seemed like everyone knew those guys. They were like the kind of the inner circle of the business.
Attitude means everything. And guys that had bad attitudes back in my day, they got weeded out real damn quick. And if their attitude got too bad and everything, they even put them in there with some old timer that would just kick his ass royally. I remember one time in Lubbock, Texas, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a local guy from around Amarillo there somewhere. And we were in Lubbock, and there was an old guy there named Tony Morelli. Tony looked like anything but a tough guy. He had a kind of a little pot belly on him. His hair was badly thinning.
Yeah.
He'd sit around, and he wore thick glasses, and he'd sit around and smoked a little Sherlock Holmes-looking pipe all the time. And he'd sit there in the dressing room real quiet, with the nicest guy in the world, He'd sit there real quiet with his legs crossed, smoking his pipe and reading a newspaper till it was time to go in the ring. This young guy that was there didn't want to put him over when he was told to. So he was going to go out and show Tony Morelli what it's all about. You have never seen a more embarrassed guy. He came back in the dressing room, and he was actually crying. Morelli never hurt him real bad, but he just took him down and rode him, and he let him up, and he took him back down again, and he rode him some more, and took him down and rode him, and actually literally spanked him in front of all the fans, and just belittled the shit out of him and made him realize how helpless he really was and what Tony could do to him if he really turned himself loose on him, And you'd be surprised at the attitude change in that guy. From then on, whenever he was around, boy, he was very respectful to anybody that had any more experience than he did. He didn't run his mouth, never bitched about doing a job. Had a what an attitude adjustment Morelli gave him.
My dad always used to say, fear the quiet guys. Those are the guys who are probably most capable of kicking your ass, not the guys who are yapping. And nowadays I see a lot of guys in the ring who, the average mark could probably kick their ass, and they're probably saying, I don't know how that equates into, being good for the business. But
one of the early matches that you don't really get a chance to talk about too much, maybe you could expound on, was Gorgeous George, where it all started, as far as getting the business going, bringing it back to life. Can you tell us about that?
First time I ever wrestled Gorgeous George was in Amarillo, Texas, and when I found out the week before, when they made the announcements and everything, that who my opponent was for that Thursday night, oh my God, the famous Gorgeous George, So anyway, I was nervous as a cat on a hot tin roof, as they say. And anyway, I went to the ring, and I'm standing in the ring, and I'm waiting for him to make his grand appearance. And here he come down the aisle, strutting with that beautiful robe on and the long, beautiful, golden, curly locks, and his valet. He climbs into the ring and so on, and we did the normal. He tries to sneak up on me, and I turn and go to charge him, and he picks up his robe like a woman with a gown, and struts around the ring, getting away from me and all that. So anyway, we do that back and forth and kind of tease the crowd a little. And then finally he unrobes, hands the robe to the valet. She puts it on a hanger, puts it in a bag, and sprays him with the cologne, comes in, sprays me with the cologne, and then does her little exit. As soon as she does her exit, the bell rings. George and I go to square off, and just as we go to square off, he throws his hands up like for a timeout. Calls the valet back. She's about halfway down the aisle by now. She comes back, climbs up on the apron, gets down in the corner, hangs the clothes bag in the corner, and opens this box. Well, George walks over to the corner, and all of a sudden he takes his two thumbs up around the sideburns in front of his ear, and he pops this wig up and pulls all these golden curly locks off and puts this wig in the bag, and there he stands bald-headed. Because 2 nights before that, he'd worked a hair match in Toronto with Billy Watson and lost.
Oh yeah, that was famous.
Head. Yeah, and nobody knew about it. And I'm telling you, I was flabbergasted. Talk about taking somebody by surprise. And that was my first experience with Gorgeous George. You
should have said, "Don't flip your wig, George," before the end.
Yeah, Joe, you said he was a lot tougher than people gave him credit for, wasn't he?
He was fearless. He didn't know the meaning of the word fear. Okay. He didn't give a damn how big you were, or how tough you were supposed to be, or whatever. If you wanted a piece of him, he would accommodate you.
Yeah, that's what my dad told me, that he was half salty, as my dad referred to it as. He could go a bit.
Yeah.
And I know he was a real scientist of the mat too. He would go home after the match and sit there and figure out what he could do better, what he did wrong, what made the crowd move. And but you know what, Joe? I know we're kind of limited on time, but I wanted to have you get that story out. Not all the fans in all the places love to see you, but you had a few incidents there, more than one. Can you tell us about one of the incidents there where you had some people waiting on you?
Back in my era, when you had heat, you had heat. You had the type of heat that people wanted to kill you, and sometimes tried to. They'd tear your car all to hell if they found your car where your car was parked, and so on like that. And we had riots, and people hitting you with chairs and trying to cut you with knives. I was cut 4 times in my career. Fortunately, none of them were life-threatening. But anyway, all this is going on, right? Uh-huh. Not like today. And they try to say, well, our security today is much better than back then. That's bull. Security back then, we had security back then, But there's only so many cops, and you got 500 people or 1,000 people that are in a riotous mood, then by God, you got trouble. Anyway.
Exactly.
Had a match in Lakeland, and everywhere I went back in those days, everywhere that I went, I carried a .45 automatic. Match was over. Had some trouble getting out of the ring with these guys, and so on and so forth. So, which was a normal thing. That happened on a nightly basis practically. As soon as the cops got me to the dressing room, boy, their job was over. They got the hell out of Dodge. I was left alone in the building. So as I'm leaving the dressing room, this woman come inside and came running down the hall. And she told me, she says, there's 4 or 5 guys out there, and he says, 2 of them have got knives. He says, they're going to jump you. I said, okay. So I had that .45 stuck in my belt, and I didn't want to have to take a chance on dropping it or whatever. So I took my towel out of my bag, put the .45 in my hand, and I wrapped the towel around my hand. So I walked out there, and here they come, all 5 of them. And 2 of them had knives, and one of them, and they were real hickey-looking guys, And then one guy says, I'm thinking I'm going to cut that goddamn mask right off of your head. And I said, oh, really? He says, yeah. So about that time, I unflipped that towel off my hand, showed him that .45, and I said, well, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking I ain't killed me a redneck son of a bitch all day long. I said, he's going to be the first. He got a gun. And they all run like goddamn dogs. But that's the kind of stuff we went through back in those days,